Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate the articles essential, important, and optional. You can follow along at gaiinsights.com/articles. And please comment, give us your views, participate in the discussion. We'd really appreciate it. Today we have John, Ankaj, Paul, and Amanda from our regular crew. Amanda is our regular crew, but she was on sabbatical, finishing her PhD. She just defended. Congrats, Amanda. Thanks for joining. And we have a special guest today, Vivek Makhatia, who is an AI customer engagement lead at Pfizer. So he joins quite regularly and has tremendous insights. Welcome, Vivek.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice.
All right, let's start with the first article, Ankash, please.
Sure, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Harvard Business Review and talks about how GenAI is transforming market research.
Yeah, a very thoughtful article talking about various ways that are emerging that the market research can be impacted with examples and citing the startups that are putting together platforms for that. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I thought this was essential reading. And I also just want to remind folks that they can find our articles at gaiinsights.com/articles. This is a very nice study. I spent 2 years, these three different authors looked at the nature of use of AI in market research. And they simplified it down into three big categories that we can see here, and opportunity identification and design, collection and analysis, reporting and dissemination. Pretty straightforward. But, some lovely things in here about how you can use synthetic data, how that really helps to validate different kind of capabilities. The other thing is that, there's a traditional trade-off in market research between survey data, which tends to be less rich, what the anthropologists call thick description, versus focus groups or observational data, watching people use your product or service and understanding it. And they're saying, hey, look, you can do both. You can do really rich context at scale, which I think is true. And then at the end, I think they do a very nice job of, laying out some of the risks around bias and, some of the kinds of synthetic data that are really not very helpful, like multiple choice simulations and so forth. So I would say this is essential reading, and not just for marketing executives, because every executive, from the chairman of the board on down, needs to understand how fundamentally our understanding of customer needs and desires are changing, and how I think this is going to be a big new capability that all organizations are going to need. So essential.
Okay. Vivek, with your Pfizer hat on, what did you think your community would think about this paper?
Yeah, no, I'm with John. I was between important and essential, and everything John's mentioned, I've been swayed towards essential. This is an area of emerging interest for me as well, where you're trying to understand a customer's perspective, make data-driven decisions, and the article talks about digital twins. So really having and querying and doing A/B testing, these things that they're very extremely expensive, you can do it for a lower cost, and then validate them in a setting is an emerging trend. So agentic stakeholder engagements, all of these are now we have the technology to enable this type of interactions and get really rich data to support our decisions. So this every AI leader should understand this trend and move towards it, because it's going to be a strategic enabler.
Important, essential. Amanda, what's your thinking?
Yeah, it bare minimum, I'd say important. And I also could be on board with essential as well for similar reasons that have already been spoken. And the fact that it goes into the positives, but it also gives some of like some technical limitations, ethical concerns, things like that, like hallucinations, bias, just sort of a reminder for the leader to dig back in there. So it's not all, how everything's great, but it just lets you know about some things to watch out for. So I really liked it for that reason as well. And again, some of the use cases in there that's mixed in with the actual information, which typically if it's a use case, I tend to shy away from essential if it's only a use case, I should say. But yeah, I agree with all that's been said so far.
Yeah, I was particularly interested in new products identification using the personas of the customers through the digital twin and synthetic data of generating those personas, right? So I think this is the upcoming trend where there will be more and more tools for this. And you could say it's market research, but it's in the core of differentiated product design. So I think people should really look at this with the eye of how can I deploy it and what tools should I be using for doing this, because I think it will become more and more important. Paul, we're going essential.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to highlight, this is, in my mind, I've heard enough stories about this. Fantastic when I heard a large car manufacturer, how they used to take 6 months and spend $200,000 to figure out how customers use dogs in their car, and it collapsed that. This is now, in my view, the new standard in practice. So this is not optional. This is the standard of practice here. So if you're an AI leader and your company's not using this, you are now at a competitive disadvantage here. I think there's enough confidence in this here. So
Okay.
Another reason for essential.
Yeah, essential it is for a number of reasons. So thank you all for articulating them. So essential. Let's proceed. Ankash, please.
So next is a research paper about scaling laws for native multimodal models.
Yeah, Amanda, this is, it seems like a number of interns working on this and putting all kinds of research together into tables and the like. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so for the technical audience, I mean, I could say it's something important to look at, but for our typical leader, I would say this one's optional just because it gets very technical. But one thing that is useful though, if they want to at least kind of glance through it, is there's like this evaluation of early versus late fusion models for different like architecture choices. And it talks about this like compute optimal model for like scaling, like using scaling laws for training and things like this. So there is some information that I think they could find useful. And then it talks a little bit about cost and efficiency and things like this. So I would say if they could eyeball it, but again, I just think the technical depth could go over some heads if they're not really focused on it. So that's why I'd say this one's probably more optional in my opinion.
Okay, Vivek, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in line with optional. I think it's an interesting study in terms of Apple trying to catch up because they've missed the boat on foundation models. They're trying to find algorithmic innovations and understanding. Hey, how can we now look at data, because the world's going more multimodal? If we can look at images, text all at once and train the model from ground up using multimodal, is it cheaper? And the conclusions are that, hey, yes, if you do this, it's easier to train. There's less compute burden on the eventual model, but it is the catch up. But there are use cases being enabled, right? Healthcare. And I was at a conference last week in oncology. They're taking radiology images, EHR, that could be audio, histology, pathology images, all in one to make a decision around patient diagnosis. So these type of models, when done correctly, and if the compute needs are, I could be swayed into an important if that sort of the use cases are focused. But the article is highly technical to Amanda's point, so
Yeah,
we can spare the audience.
No, but we are multimodal beasts, right? So in essence, this is where it will evolve too, right? The ability to process all of it at once. This is where we're going. But yeah, I agree. This is quite dense. We have optional important, John? Thoughts?
I was going optional for a different reason, not the technical depth, but the fact that the conclusion is that basically both models do the same. right? You don't get a lot of performance out of multimodal models from the beginning. So that's why I had it as optional.
Okay. Paul, okay with optional? Optional. Optional it is. Let's proceed. Thank you.
Yep. Next one comes from writers. So they have unveiled an AI HQ platform, and they are betting on agents to transform enterprise work.
Yeah, a sort of promotional article from the company called Writer. Vivek, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think so just a little background. So the writer is like an enterprise-focused Gen AI company that launched their platform called AI HQ. It is a centralized platform to deploy, manage, and orchestrate autonomous agents. So what Paul was mentioning, this is now the standard practice that companies need to look into autonomous agents to replicate workflows. So from that perspective, this is an important trend or an essential trend, but the article itself doesn't go into much details into the potential benefits. It doesn't discuss costs, technical expertise, scalability required, or they don't really provide any data on operational efficiencies of companies who have actually utilized that platform. So if they had provided data, it would have been an important, but I was at optional. But this is an important trend, but we've talked about it already on the call today.
Yeah. Amanda, what's your thoughts? Optional. Vivek is rating it's optional.
Yeah, I also agree with the optional side of things. And yeah, I think it's just a basic sort of reminder about agentic AI, self-evolving model concept, things like this. So I wouldn't say there's anything like new and groundbreaking in here at all. So for me, it's very optional.
Okay. John, Paul, any disagreeing with this?
No, I think we need a new rating, which is avoid this article.
Why?
Because it's got a bunch of baloney in it about the tension premise at the beginning is, oh my God, there's so much spending on generative AI, no one's getting value, which is just not true. We saw that in the previous article, from Harvard Business Review. So anyway, anything that starts with a false tension always is avoidable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Okay, triple optional, I guess. Paul, okay? Yep. All right. Optional it is. Let's proceed.
The next one comes from OpenAI, and they have launched BrowseComp, a benchmark for browsing agents.
Yeah, so it's a 1,200 plus problems that you can test the performance of an agent. What did you think about this, John?
I was going to give this optional. It's very interesting finding, even their own models don't do very well on finding these very specific pieces of information. And it makes sense when you think about how large language model math works, that, it's hard to find a specific instance. I was just thinking about, why are they bothering here? And I had two options in my mind. One is companies got too much money and people are just doing stuff. And then the second option is that, there's this to me might be the beginning of a philosophy, which I think is pretty sophisticated, which is how finding specific instances of facts with complex descriptions, which is what they're how people prompt to get this information. It's a director from the 1930s who had experience in World War I, and this is about, anyway, you can imagine, right? You can give these fantastic contextual things, which are very human ways to remember stuff, and then to go find facts. And so I would guess that what this is part of their effort to do a multi-model model and create a deeper semantic operating system, because as we've talked about before, we really think, here at GAI, that you got the semantic operating system is going to have a parser in the front. It's going to decompose the problem into a bunch of things that are going to be either traditional database lookups or traditional AI or generative AI. You're going to have truth finding mechanism. You have a reintegration thing, and then at the other end, you're going to have the answer. And I could imagine them building models that are good at finding specific facts, and that parser routing the request, and that would be a fantastic addition to the current models. So anyway, that's my speculation. They're not sloppy. They're strategic, but they could be sloppy. In any case, it's an optional article.
Okay. Optional rating, it's from the perspective of where it's going. I really do think it's strategic for a number of reasons, but let's ask our other analysts. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm optional on this one too. And the one thing I like kind of zoned in on was the whole thing where they were looking at deep research. And it keeps it, I don't know, it never ceases to amaze me, because I've said this before, but for those in the audience who haven't heard me say this, since I just finished up my dissertation, I tested ChatGPT with it to see what it would spit out. And I did use deep research to see what it would spit out. And it still just, to me, didn't give me the technical depth. And it talks about that in here as well. So I don't really know I don't really know the point of this one completely, in my own personal opinion. I feel like it's almost like a marketing piece. And then for them to kind of say what I've been saying is, and then they say, give it a ground truth, and then the things aren't unsolvable, this and that. But I thought kind of like the point was, give it a topic and let it do its thing, not you already have the information and let it summarize for you. So I don't know, that was just my opinion on it.
Vivek, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was kind of similar to John, that why did they release this? I think there's a commoditization of browsing as a platform for AI agents, and they're trying to kind of get into this era where Bing and Google just have so much of a lead. So if they can develop a platform that is used as a benchmark, then they believe that they have the technology to utilize this platform to do market intelligence, research automation. I couldn't figure out why, other than them wanting to really expand in this space, because browsing agents like Max and all of these are becoming ubiquitous now as well. So,
okay, Paul,
I'm optional still. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like super optional. Your thoughts?
Yeah, optional as well. I do think it's strategic. I think what they need is more specific problem statements, and everyone's been benchmarking all these models against known benchmarks here, and they're developing a new set of benchmarks. I think, and Amanda's one's interesting, that can they come back a year from now, 2 years from now, and blow her away with their analysis? And I'm finding that subject matter expert gap versus current technology is something that the AI non-domain experts can really focus on, but we're beating the hell out of this optional one.
Yeah, no, but I really do think it's strategic, and it might be crucial for the people who are training models, because the quality of the answer, if we could train models with not to be verbose, right, and go around and tell us all about all the stuff that they've done without a specific answer, that's bad. And this is getting closer to for the insides of the model to actually provide a very specific answer, and that's not out there yet. So it's certainly strategic, but optional for our audience here. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed. Ankaj.
The next one comes from Bain & Company, and they talk about 5 questions for every CEO regarding Gen AI.
Yes. An interesting presentation, not just the article and data from Bain. What do you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah, I think this is it was underwhelming a little bit, given that John's published his Prism article already, which is essentially a restate of that article of what leaders and CEOs should do, align with strategic goals, being intentional about investment, reshaping, understanding org structures, managing risks, sort of risk and talent gaps. The only piece that I really enjoyed was all the way at the bottom. If Ankaj, if you can go down all the way down, it says the no regrets bets for CEOs. It was the last infographic. Yep, this one. I think these were very well laid out, and in some of these specifically around creating a strong ecosystem of relationships. I think one of the things I've seen very much is that most enterprises don't understand their own limitations when it comes to Gen AI. I give this an important because of just this specific, but overall, I would highly recommend to go and read the Prism article from John. So that was where I was.
Okay, important, maybe. Okay, let's not ask John. Let's ask maybe Amanda. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. The only thing I would say though, just from a housekeeping perspective, I don't know if it's me, but this was very hard for me to read. It was like too big. I couldn't minimize it. Then when I did, I couldn't read it. So that's my feedback on this as well. Is I don't know if they have time to, unless it was just me, minimize. I mean, it was too much. So for that reason alone, readability. I also, even though it looks cool, I couldn't get it to line up that great for me. It was very annoying. So for that reason as well, I was teetering a little bit more on the optional front.
Yeah, I was too, actually, because it didn't provide that much information per se, maybe what Vivek is pointing out at the last chart, but it didn't really capture any news. And they're such at the high level that it's almost irrelevant, right? So, Paul, let's not ask John since he has a better article for this, right?
Yeah,
So, what do you think?
I had it as optional. I thought it was a lot of platitudes. To me, I'm comparing against the Spotify CEO memo that went around last week that sparked a lot of conversation. I don't see this spark any conversation debate, so optional.
Okay. Vivek, okay with optional?
Yeah, I'm good with optional. Yeah.
Yeah, and John, you certainly will rate as optional, right? In comparison with yours, for sure. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Yeah. So the last one that we have for today comes from Microsoft Research and talks about Debug Gym, an environment for AI coding tools to learn how to debug code like programmers.
Yeah, Amanda, what did you think? This is an ever-present problem of debugging the software code that all of us have dabbled in, I'm sure. So, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm on the fence here because if the leader hasn't really heard about like debugging and things like this, and it's coming from Microsoft for them to just, know that these tools are existing out there and they're in development and things like this to assist with the coding process. Now we have sort of instead of it just giving you the code, this sort of debugging agent. But to be honest with you, I mean, it's pretty short and sweet. There's not a ton in here, so yeah, the idea of it I think is important. But I'm not sure there's really much in here to really grab. So I could be on the optional side of things for this one.
Okay. Optional important. Vivek, what's your thinking about this?
Yeah, I was on the important, given that I've been doing so much vibe coding recently using these tools and one of the things, the first iteration is very easy. It's for someone who doesn't know how to code. And doing the debug piece is difficult. So if this tool, if its claims are true, that it can then improve these AI coding agents through this gym and learn and teach them how to debug better, there's always benefit because it's going to expedite even faster prototyping for AI leaders. So that's why it was important, something to
Okay.
understand.
But
I think AI leaders does not apply. So I'm okay with optional as well.
Okay. So going for important here, optional important. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to give it an important. I thought, I agree. It's not that dense an article and so forth, but the idea of a debug gym, how you can, so many agents are going to be created and are being created to help with debugging, the ability to create a meta environment where you can use those. This, I think, is one of the massive leverage points in the entire economy is how, if we can keep getting better and better at generating software, whether you're vibe coding or going back into old code and refactoring it or whatever. So much of the value add has to do with software. And I think anything we can do about getting at the calculus, that is the improvement of the improvement, which is what I think we're talking about here, is important. It's not that deep an article, doesn't have evidence and so forth. So that's why it's not essential, but I give it a solid important.
Yeah, I'm with the solid important as well. Having debugged many very complicated programs, you sometimes sitting there scratching your head of why you're not getting the right result. So there's no semantic problem. So all the bugs on language is fixed, right? So it's really the reasoning of the program that doesn't give you quite the right results on an esoteric case, right? And so it's very difficult to fish out where the program went amok. And the more debugging things or automatic, finding those places where it went awry is critically important for the fact that most of our software will be automatically generated. So I just think it is an important topic that needs more and more attention. And so I'm very solid on important. What did you think about this, Paul?
I would just add the software is, in my mind, the bullseye inside the bullseye inside the bullseye for AI adoption. And I continue to see massive change management challenges in every software development at every company I talk with here. So I think one of the keys a leader needs to do is do everything humanly possible, carrot, stick, multiple articles, to get both the top leadership and the bottom up coders embracing the stuff here. It's changing way too fast, and I continue to shocked at how many AI software coders and developers still don't understand how fast this is changing, or still haven't heard a cursor, or haven't tried some of these tools here. So definitely important.
Yeah, so you're talking about change management as like staying with what's happening in the market, and that's really
well. No, just you shouldn't have 500 developers and not have anyone trying any of these tools.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I'm talking about even change management when you're doing the software. Software folks are not very good
Exactly.
at actually staging stuff and putting only the certain changes into the release. Yeah, it's another topic, but these environments are critical, I think. Okay, guys, do we go for important? Amanda, Vivek, okay?
Important.
Yep. All right, going for important.
And
Luda,
if I just hover back on that one, this whole kind of continuous deployment models that some of the most advanced software companies are out, they're going to be able to make even further progress ahead. So if you're still waterfall batch and trying to compete someone, it's breathtaking the efficiencies that these tools are giving. And if you're a competitive marketplace, you have to know that, and you need to get confidence in your executive team that your software team is exploiting, developing, learning, debating all this stuff as rapidly as you can.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's a general argument here which is really important for folks to understand. If you go back to the beginning of personal computers and Doug Engelbart and that stuff, the Augmented Knowledge Workshop, trying to collectively get a bunch of highly skilled people to have a higher IQ doing urgent interdependent tasks. That one of the things that AI allows you to do, and software is a great example, is it allows you to get everybody on the same page from the point of view of levels of expertise and different domains that are relevant. And most complex problems, when you're at the design or the redo stage, you need to pool a bunch of smart people together, all in the same cognitive context, to then come up with a new solution. And what AI does fantastically is it translates across levels of expertise in different domains. So it expands that problem space. And that problem space, unfortunately, is basically, if you think of it in short-term, long-term memory terms, is short-term memory. So it goes away. It's a wasting asset, right? It's like an orchid. You have to get everybody up on the same page at the same time, solve the problem, and AI makes that orchid-like environment easier. And that's a huge deal, because a lot of the most complex and high value-added activities of organizations live in that orchid greenhouse, right?
Yeah, very good, John. Well said. Okay, so Ankash, if you could put up the scorecard announcements, Paul, John.
Yeah, fantastic day coming up. Well, go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, we have a fantastic day coming up. Tonight we'll be at the Quinn House for a bunch of speakers for this Imagination in Action, led by the great impresario and brilliant mind, John Warner. And then tomorrow we have a full day at the MIT Media Lab. Paul and I are both going to be presenting on. I'm going to be talking about data and its relationship to insight, and I'll also be doing a lightning talk on the relationship of the gift culture to the paid culture. But lots going on. Paul?
Learning Lab tonight is canceled because so many of us are going to be at the thing. Not only is the two other things I want to highlight. WEX is one company that we work with. They're sending 9 of their people to the conference tomorrow. They're also sending 10 to our conference in the fall. So one of the things I'm seeing out from leading companies like WEX is using these events as team building, as rapid learning triggers is really fantastic, and I encourage more companies to do that. Second thing is we continue to make progress on our nonprofit initiative called AI Blueprint. We're submitting a grant today for that, but it's been really fascinating seeing the coalescing of stakeholders from universities to governments to startups to VCs around that to build out the ecosystem. And I think it's a model certainly for our state here, but for all regions around the world.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, John, for your comments. So today we had one essential about transforming market research, and one important about debugging environments for the code generated by bots or code generated by you, and the rest is optional. So thank you for joining, and have a tremendous day, and join us at the conference if you can tomorrow. Bye-bye. We'll see you tomorrow.